Outside a grand wedding venue, a little girl tugs the bride's gown and points inside. My daddy wrote that song. The first dance melody was licensed from a famous producer, but the true composer was the homeless-looking busker on the curb, whose life's work was stolen 5 years earlier. His name is Leo Hayes. A decade ago, he co-wrote a hit that vanished from charts and from his life. The producer he trusted registered the song under a different name, cutting Leo out entirely. Now a single dad busking for grocery money, Leo had given up until his daughter's innocent words at a billionaire's wedding exposed a 5-year lie and ignited a legal war that would redefine theft in the music industry. To understand that moment on the curb, you have to go back 12 years. Leo Hayes wasn't always holding a cracked guitar case. He was the golden boy of the Nashville songwriting scene, a lyricist with a rare gift for melody who signed his first publishing deal at 22. His demos landed on the desk of Marcus Thorne, a producer known for crafting indie folk into mainstream gold. Thorne saw raw potential. He offered Leo a development deal, studio time, a small advance, and a partnership. For a young artist, it was a dream. They wrote together for 3 years. Leo provided the heart, the haunting progressions. Thorne provided the polish, the industry connections. Their breakthrough was a song called Carry You Home. Leo wrote the chord structure and the chorus melody on a rain-soaked night after his father's funeral. Thorne helped shape the bridge. They recorded a pristine demo. Leo played the aching acoustic riff that became the song's signature. They played it for A&R reps. The buzz was immediate. A major label artist was interested. Then, silence. Leo called Thorne's office for weeks. His emails went unanswered. Finally, a terse letter arrived from a lawyer. It stated that the song Carry You Home was registered as a work-for-hire composition, solely authored and owned by Marcus Thorne Productions. Leo's name was nowhere on the copyright filing. The legal language was impenetrable, but the message was clear. You have no claim here. Leo was devastated but naive. He hired a lawyer with his last savings. The lawyer explained the mountain. To prove plagiarism, Leo needed to show Thorne had access to the original work, which he did. They collaborated, and that the songs were substantially similar. The demo tapes existed, but Thorne had cleverly re-recorded the final version with a different vocalist and a slightly altered arrangement. The core, the soul of the song, was identical. But in court, feel is an expensive argument. The lawyer laid out the brutal reality. Fighting a well-funded producer like Thorne could cost $200,000 or more, with no guarantee of victory. The precedent was shaky. Even the landmark Blurred Lines case, which ruled a song's vibe could be copyrighted, took years and millions in legal fees. Leo had nothing. He was 26, broke and blackballed. No other publisher would touch someone entangled in a legal dispute with a player like Thorne. This is where the myth of the stolen song becomes the reality of a shattered life. Leo fell into a depression. His girlfriend, Maya, stuck by him through the initial fight, but the constant stress and financial freefall took its toll. When Maya told him she was pregnant, it was a spark of joy in a dark time. But the fear was overwhelming. How could he provide? He took a job loading trucks. It wasn't enough. The eviction notice came 2 months before his daughter, Chloe, was born. They moved into a motel room paid for by a charity. The night Chloe arrived, Leo held her and made a promise. He would never let his failures be her burden. He sold his remaining studio equipment, bought a decent acoustic guitar, and started playing on street corners. Maya tried. For a year she tried. But the exhaustion of new motherhood, coupled with the grief of seeing Leo's spirit broken, was too much. She left one morning saying she needed to find herself. She loved Chloe, she said, but she couldn't drown with him. Leo was now a single father, alone with an infant and a guitar. For 5 years, this was the rhythm of their life. Leo's world narrowed to 2 points: the busking spots that paid for formula, then diapers, then preschool supplies, and the small, sparse apartment they managed to rent. Chloe grew. She was his light. She'd sit on a blanket beside him as he played, her tiny voice singing along to melodies she'd heard 1,000 times. Carry You Home was never part of his set. That song was a ghost. Meanwhile, Marcus Thorne's career soared. Carry You Home, released by a rising female folk singer, became a sleeper hit. It didn't top charts, but it found a cult following. It was placed in a popular indie film. Its streaming numbers climbed steadily into the millions. Thorne collected the publishing royalties, the sync fees. He was interviewed in trade magazines as a songwriter's producer. Leo would see these articles sometimes on the free library computer. The pain was a dull, constant ache. Leo kept meticulous records. In a worn notebook, he had the original chord charts dated. He had the old emails from Thorne discussing the song. He had a copy of that first demo, saved on a weathered flash drive he kept in a Ziploc bag. It was his quiet archive of injustice, maintained not with hope of justice, but as a testament for Chloe. Someday, he would tell her the story. Someday, she would know her father wasn't just a man on a curb. The wedding of Alina Vance was the event of the season. The tech CEO was marrying her longtime partner in a lavish ceremony at the historic Wilshire Hall. Alina was a known patron of the arts. She wanted a bespoke, emotionally resonant playlist. Her wedding planner hired Marcus Thorne to curate the music. Thorne, of course, included Carry You Home as the recommended first dance song. He licensed it to the event company, collecting a $5,000 sync fee. It was just another line item in his portfolio. Leo knew none of this. That Saturday evening, he was set up in his usual spot near the venue's service entrance, where the valet smoked and wealthy guests sometimes tossed a bill on their way in. Chloe, now 5, was with him. It was getting late, and he was playing a gentle original to wind down. Then the grand doors opened for a departing guest, and a wave of music spilled out. The unmistakable opening riff of Carry You Home floated into the twilight. Leo froze, his fingers stumbled on the strings. It was like hearing his own ghost. Chloe looked up at his face. "Daddy, that's your sad song." She'd never heard the recorded version, only the pieces he sometimes hummed absent-mindedly. Before he could shush her, a woman in a breathtaking white gown, flanked by her new wife, stepped outside for a breath of air. It was Alina Vance. Chloe, with the fearless logic of a child, broke from Leo's side. She marched up to the bride, tugged on her embroidered sleeve, and pointed back toward the hall. "My daddy wrote that song," she declared, her voice clear as a bell. Alina, startled, looked from the earnest little girl to the ragged, pale man on the curb, his guitar hanging limp. The disconnect was absolute. The billionaire bride, the street musician, and a melody worth millions hanging in the air between them. In that suspended second, Leo saw a lifetime of resignation collapse. The shame, the fear, the hiding, it vaporized under the beam of his daughter's truth. He met Alina Vance's shocked gaze and gave a single, slow nod. Her expression shifted from confusion to dawning, horrified comprehension. She knew the song's official credits. She had just paid the license to Marcus Thorne. She took a step toward him, her phone already in her hand. "Tell me everything," she said. And in that moment, the quiet Busker with nothing to lose realized he was holding a lit match. The entire, rotten structure of the lie was suddenly built of kindling. Leo Hayes told Alina Vance everything, right there on the sidewalk. The cool night air, the distant sound of his stolen song still playing, his daughter clutching his leg. He spoke for 10 minutes straight, the partnership, the demo, the letter, the 5 years of silence. The billionaire CEO listened without interruption, her wedding forgotten. When he finished, Alina looked at her phone, then at him. "You have proof. The original files." Leo nodded to his guitar case where the flash drive lived beside spare picks and a juice box for Chloe. "I have everything." Alina's expression hardened. This wasn't just a sad story, it was a system failure happening on her doorstep. She built her fortune in tech, where intellectual property was the bedrock. She recognized theft when she saw it. "Give me the drive," she said. It wasn't a request. Leo hesitated for only a second. This woman could walk away, delete his only evidence, and he'd be worse off than before. But he saw no malice in her eyes, only a furious, focused calculation. He handed it over. Alina passed it to a sleek-suited assistant who'd materialized beside her. "Get this to David Chen. Tell him I want a preliminary analysis by sunrise, no leaks." Then she turned back to Leo. Where can I reach you? He gave her the address of his apartment, a place he was suddenly ashamed to name. Alina didn't flinch. She typed it into her phone. Go home, get some sleep. Someone from my legal team will contact you tomorrow. She started to walk away, then stopped. She knelt, bringing herself eye level with Chloe. You did a very brave thing tonight, she said softly. Then she was gone, swept back into the glittering venue, leaving Leo and Chloe alone in the sudden quiet. Leo didn't sleep. He paced his small apartment, the adrenaline a live wire in his veins. Chloe, exhausted, had crashed on the couch. He kept replaying the encounter. Had he just made the biggest mistake of his life, trusting a stranger with his only leverage? At 5:17 in the morning, his cheap prepaid phone buzzed with an unknown number. The voice on the other end was crisp, professional. Mr. Hayes, this is David Chen, General Counsel for Vance Capital. We've reviewed the materials. We need you to come to our offices at 9 a.m. Can you arrange childcare? The question was jarring in its normalcy. Leo stammered a yes. He woke a neighbor, promised $20 for money he didn't have, and took 2 buses across town to a steel-end glass skyscraper. David Chen was waiting in a minimalist conference room. He was younger than Leo expected, with an air of unshakable calm. On a large screen was a forensic audio analysis. 2 waveforms were superimposed, Leo's raw demo from 12 years ago and the final mastered version of Carry You Home, released by Marcus Thorne. The core frequency patterns, the spectral fingerprints of the guitar riff, were a 99.8% match. This, Chen said, pointing, is what we call a smoking gun in digital form. He didn't just steal the song. He used your actual recording as the bed track and layered new vocals over it. Chen laid out the cold strategy. Marcus Thorne had executed a classic paper theft. He used the work-for-hire clause in their early, poorly drafted agreement to claim ownership after the fact. He then filed the copyright registration in his name only, creating a paper trail that looked legitimate to streaming services and licensing companies. It was a predatory but frighteningly common move in the industry, relying on the songwriter's lack of resources to fight back. Alina wants to pursue this, Chen said. Not just for you. She sees a pattern. My team has found 3 other songwriters with nearly identical stories involving Thorne from the last decade. They all settled out of court for tiny fractions of what they were owed under non-disclosure agreements. You're the first one who still has the original source files. You're the first one who never signed an NDA because he never offered you a settlement. He just ghosted you. The scope of it hit Leo like a physical blow. This wasn't a personal betrayal, it was a business model. Thorne wasn't a creative partner who got greedy, he was a systematic predator. Alina Vance wasn't just offering help, she was launching a targeted investigation. Chen slid a document across the table. It was a retainer agreement. Vance Capital would fund all legal costs against Marcus Thorne. In return, they would take a percentage of any recovered damages. It was a venture capital play, but for justice. Leo signed. The pen felt heavier than his guitar. That afternoon, from the pristine offices of Vance Capital, a letter was sent by certified mail and email to Marcus Thorne and his lawyers. It was not a polite inquiry. It was a 23-page legal missile. It outlined the claim of copyright infringement and fraud, attached the forensic audio analysis, cited the similar cases, and demanded the immediate transfer of 100% of the publishing rights and master recording for Carry You Home, plus an accounting of all royalties earned since its release, estimated by Chen's team at over $400,000, and punitive damages. The response was demanded within 48 hours. The music industry is a small town. Word leaked within hours. A gossip blog ran a vague item. Big-time producer facing legal fire from unexpected quarter. By evening, Leo's phone started buzzing with numbers he didn't know. Old acquaintances from his Nashville days, reporters. He ignored them all. Marcus Thorne did not wait 48 hours. His response came at 11 that night in the form of a phone call to David Chen. Chen put it on speakerphone in his office with Leo listening, silent. Thorne's voice was smooth, familiar, dripping with a condescending warmth that made Leo's stomach turn. David, is it? Listen, this is all a big misunderstanding. Leo was a talented kid, we collaborated, but the final work product was mine. He's clearly confused, maybe desperate. We can clear this up. I'm willing to offer a one-time goodwill payment of $20,000 to help him out. No admission of liability, of course. Chen's voice was ice. The offer is 100% ownership, full accounting and damages. The $20,000 counteroffer is noted and will be presented as evidence of bad faith in court. There was a long silence on the line. The friendly mask vanished. You have no idea who you're dealing with, Thorne spat. I'll bury you in motions. I'll drag this out for 5 years. That Busker can't afford a week of this fight. He's not paying for it, Chen replied evenly. Vance Capital is. And we have considerably more patience and resources than you do. He hung up. The war was declared. The next morning, Thorne's lawyers filed a preemptive suit in federal court, alleging defamation and tortious interference with business relations against Leo Hayes. It was a classic intimidation tactic, meant to scare him into dropping the case. The legal paperwork arrived at Leo's apartment by courier. The weight of it, the official language accusing him of wrongdoing, was paralyzing. But then something unexpected happened. Alina Vance called him directly. Leo, she said, her voice calm through the phone, the defamation suit is a paper tiger. It means we've scared him. He's trying to change the narrative to make you look like the aggressor. We're going to change it back. Her plan was audacious. She wasn't just going to fight in court, she was going to fight in the court of public opinion. Vance Capital's PR team drafted a press release, but Alina scrapped it. It needs a human face, she said. 2 days later, a respected music journalist from a major publication arrived at Leo's apartment. Chloe was at a friend's house, arranged and paid for by Alina's team. For 2 hours, Leo told his story again, this time with David Chen present to verify the legal facts. He showed the journalist his notebook, his old guitar. He played the original demo. The article published online at 8 a.m. on a Tuesday. The headline was blunt. The songwriter in the shadows, how a producer, business model allegedly steals careers. It was meticulously reported. It featured the audio analysis graphics, quotes from one of the other songwriters who had settled with Thorne, who spoke anonymously, still bound by an NDA but willing to risk it, and details of Thorne's countersuit. It did not paint Leo as a saint, but as a man who had been broken by a rigged system. The internet caught fire. Carry You Home began trending on streaming platforms, but now the comment sections were flooded with messages about Leo Hayes. The folk singer who had recorded the hit version issued a statement expressing shock and sadness, and pledged to donate her past performance royalties from the song to a songwriters' rights charity, pending the legal outcome. The pressure was now on Thorne's world. His social media accounts went silent. His lawyer issued a terse statement calling the article a one-sided smear campaign and a shakedown by a failed songwriter and his wealthy benefactor. The language was defensive, angry. It was the reaction of a cornered man. Leo, watching this unfold from his apartment, felt like he was in a cyclone. Reporters camped outside his building. Overnight, his GoFundMe for Chloe's future, which had languished for years with $200, ballooned to over $50,000. Offers for interviews, for solo gigs, for new songwriting deals flooded his managed inbox. David Chen had hired a temporary manager to field them. The world was suddenly listening, but the noise was deafening. Amid the chaos, a single email arrived. It was from Maya, Chloe's mother. The subject line was just Chloe. Leo's heart stopped. The message was short. I saw the news. I'm so sorry for everything. Is she okay? Can I call? It was the first contact in 4 years. The past wasn't just knocking, it was kicking the door down. Leo had to choose between answering it and protecting the fragile new reality he was building for his daughter. The legal battle was one front. This was another, far more dangerous one. Leo didn't reply to Maya's email. He closed the laptop, his hands shaking. The past was a landmine and she was standing right on it. He had a scheduled call with David Chen in 10 minutes. The legal war had just entered a critical new phase, discovery. In civil litigation, discovery is where the bones of a case are laid bare. Each side can demand documents, emails, financial records. Chen explained it to Leo like a surgical strike. We've subpoenaed Thorne's business accounts, his studio logs, his communications with distributors for Carry You Home. If our theory is right, and this is a pattern, the evidence will be in his own files. Thorne's team, in turn, had subpoenaed everything about Leo: his tax returns, his bank statements, his mental health records from after the song was stolen. It was a brutal, invasive process designed to intimidate and find dirt. The first batch of documents from Thorne's side arrived. Chen's team sorted through thousands of pages of emails, invoices, and contracts. They found what they were looking for, but it was bigger than they imagined. It wasn't just 3 other songwriters. It was 7. And the method was identical: a collaborative demo, a claim of work for hire, a copyright filed in Thorne's name alone, followed by either a ghosting or a cheap, forced settlement under a crushing NDA. The total estimated value of the stolen songs was in the millions. Marcus Thorne hadn't just stolen a song from Leo Hayes. He'd built a segment of his career on a foundation of theft. Chen filed an amended complaint, expanding the case to a civil RICO claim, racketeering, arguing Thorne was running an enterprise through a pattern of fraudulent activity. The legal stakes skyrocketed from a copyright dispute to a potential multi-million-dollar fraud case with possible criminal referrals. Thorne's response was swift and vicious. His lawyers filed a motion to compel, demanding Leo undergo a psychiatric evaluation, implying his claims were the delusions of an unstable mind. They also leaked a carefully curated selection of documents to a friendly media outlet: Leo's past eviction notices, records showing he'd been on food assistance, a single, out-of-context email from years ago where a despondent Leo had written to a friend, "I feel like I'm disappearing." The narrative they spun was clear. Leo Hayes was a bitter, failed musician trying to exploit the system for a payday. The public discourse, which had been firmly on Leo's side, began to splinter, comment sections filled with doubts. Why did he wait so long? He seems unstable. Maybe he's just jealous of Thorne's success. The venom was paralyzing. Leo stopped reading the articles. The money from the GoFundMe felt tainted. It was in this storm that Maya called. Leo, against his better judgment, answered. Her voice was the same, but thinner, laced with a regret he'd never heard before. She was living across the country, waitressing. She'd seen the news, seen Chloe's picture. She wanted to see her, just once. Leo's protective instincts screamed. This woman had walked away. She didn't get to swoop in during a media circus. But Chloe, overhearing him say her mother's name, was suddenly alight with questions he couldn't answer. He consulted David Chen, not as a lawyer, but as the only stable adult in his new, surreal life. Chen was blunt. If she files for custody or visitation, your current mental state, your financial instability, all of which Thorne is publicly highlighting, could be used against you. You need to get ahead of this. The legal battle with Thorne was now directly threatening his custody of Chloe. The two fronts of the war had merged into a single, suffocating reality. Alina Vance intervened. She invited Leo and Chloe to stay in a secure, discreet corporate apartment her company maintained. It got them out of the media scrum. She also connected Leo with a top family law attorney, paid for by a separate legal fund so it wouldn't be tied to the Thorne case. The message was clear. She was all in. But the pressure on Leo was immense. Every move was calculated, every word potentially a weapon for Thorne or Maya. Then the discovery process yielded a second, more shocking revelation. In Thorne's internal accounting files for Carry You Home, Chen's forensic accountant found a series of irregular payments. Large sums, labeled as production fees and licensing commissions, were paid to a shell company. That shell company was traced back to an executive at the streaming service where Carry You Home had been heavily playlisted. The implication was staggering. Thorne hadn't just stolen the song. He may have paid to rig the system to make it a hit, fraudulently inflating its value and his own reputation. This was no longer just a music industry story. This was a potential financial fraud case involving a public company. Chen immediately brought the evidence to federal investigators. The case was now on the radar of the Securities and Exchange Commission and the Department of Justice. The civil lawsuit was suddenly the least of Marcus Thorne's problems. Thorne's lawyers went radio silent. The defamation suit against Leo was quietly dropped. The public attack stopped. It was the silence of a man building a bunker. Rumors swirled that he was negotiating a plea deal, trying to flip on the streaming executive to save himself. For Leo, the victory felt hollow and terrifying. He was no longer David fighting Goliath. He was a tiny pawn in a massive federal investigation. Reporters now camped outside the federal courthouse, not his apartment. His name was in articles about stock manipulation and wire fraud. He wanted credit for his song, not to become a footnote in a white-collar crime scandal. It was during this tense, silent period that Maya made her move. She didn't call. She filed a petition in family court for reunification therapy and supervised visitation, citing the highly unstable and public environment Leo had created for Chloe. Thorne's leaked documents about Leo's finances and mental state were attached as exhibits. The fight for his daughter was now a formal, legal battle, using the weapons his enemy had provided. Leo sat in the sleek, quiet corporate apartment, the court papers in his lap. Chloe was coloring at the table, humming a made-up tune. He looked at her, this perfect, brave girl who had started it all with a single sentence. He had fought a powerful producer. He had ignited a federal probe, but this, the prospect of losing even a fraction of his time with her, was a defeat he could not survive. The music, the money, the credit, it all blurred into noise. Only one thing mattered. He picked up the phone and called his new family lawyer. "What do I need to do?" he asked, his voice steady for the first time in weeks. The lawyer outlined a plan: demonstrate stability, undergo a court-appointed psychological evaluation willingly, show a proactive plan for Chloe's care. It was a performance of sanity for a judge. Leo agreed to everything. He also asked David Chen to draft a settlement offer to Marcus Thorne, not for money, not for royalties, for a single specific term, a full public notarized confession of copyright ownership, stating Leo Hayes was the sole author of Carry You Home. All other claims, monetary and otherwise, Leo was willing to drop to make the federal case and the media storm go away. He needed the chaos to end for Chloe's sake. Chen was stunned. They were winning. The federal case was a golden hammer. Leo, we could own his entire catalog. We could secure Chloe's future 10 times over. Leo was firm. My daughter's future is a quiet life with her father. Get me the confession, make it public, then make it all stop. The offer was sent. For days, there was no response. Then, on a Thursday afternoon, Marcus Thorne's lawyer called. Thorne would agree to the confession, but on one condition: the document would state the theft was a terrible misunderstanding and administrative error, not fraud. He would not admit to criminal intent. It was a last, pathetic attempt to control the narrative. Leo was done negotiating. He told Chen to give Thorne a 24-hour ultimatum. Sign the confession as written, admitting to the theft of intellectual property, or Leo would hold a press conference and release every single document, email and financial record to the public, not just the courts. He would burn Thorne's reputation to the ground with transparency. 23 hours and 50 minutes later, the signed, notarized confession was delivered by courier to David Chen's office. It was a simple, one-page document. In clear language, it stated that the musical composition, Carry You Home, was written solely by Leo Hayes, that Marcus Thorne had improperly claimed authorship and ownership, and that all rights were hereby recognized as belonging to Leo. It was the truth on paper at last. Chen filed a motion to dismiss their civil suit with prejudice, attaching the confession. The legal war was over. The federal investigation into Thorne and the streaming executive, however, churned on independently, a monster that had taken on a life of its own. Leo stood on the balcony of the temporary apartment, the confession in his hand. The battle he'd fought for 12 years was won, but the war for his life, for a peaceful future with his daughter, was just entering its most fragile and decisive phase. He had the truth. Now he had to build a life worthy of it. With the signed confession in hand, Leo Hayes was finally, legally, the owner of Carry You Home. The first royalty statement arrived 2 weeks later. It wasn't the $400,000 David Chen had estimated. It was $874,612. The song had continued earning through the scandal. The money hit an escrow account controlled by Vance Capital. After their contingency fee and legal costs, Leo was left with just over $600,000. Life-changing money. The first thing he did was hire a full-time, court-approved child psychologist for Chloe to help her process the media storm and the re-emergence of her mother. The second thing he did was buy a small, modest house in a quiet neighborhood with a good school district, paying cash. No more landlords. No more evictions. He appeared in family court with his lawyer, the deed to the house, the psychologist's report, and a detailed plan for Chloe's education and care. He also brought the signed confession from Marcus Thorne. "Your Honor," his lawyer said, "Mr. Hayes has not only secured his daughter's financial future, he has demonstrated extraordinary resilience in correcting a profound injustice. He seeks only stability for his child." Maya's petition for unsupervised visitation was denied. The judge granted her supervised reunification therapy with the goal of eventual gradual visitation, contingent on her own stability and consistency. It was a balanced, careful ruling that protected Chloe while leaving a door open under watchful eyes. Leo accepted it. He knew total exclusion could breed its own kind of damage. He would manage it for Chloe's sake. With the civil case closed and the custody order set, the public spotlight dimmed. The federal investigation into Marcus Thorne and the streaming executive ground on without him. A year later, Thorne would plead guilty to 1 count of wire fraud for the rigged playlisting scheme, receiving 18 months in prison and a $2 million fine. The executive was fired and faced separate charges. It was a footnote in the business news. Leo read about it and felt nothing. He focused on building a quiet life. He set up a college fund for Chloe. He invested the remainder of the money conservatively. And he did something he never expected. He started writing music again, not for fame or a deal, but because he remembered he loved it. He turned the spare bedroom of their new house into a simple home studio. Alina Vance remained a quiet supporter. She commissioned him to write an original piece for a corporate philanthropy video, paying him a fair, professional rate. It was the first time he'd earned money from music without fear. When the video aired, the byline read, "Original music by Leo Hayes." That credit meant more than the check. Then, the final, surprising twist. David Chen called with an unusual request. The other 7 songwriters who had settled with Thorne under non-disclosure agreements had banded together. Thorne's confession in Leo's case had given them an opening. Their NDAs had clauses that voided the agreement if the underlying claims of ownership were proven false in another legal proceeding. Leo's confession was that proof. They wanted to form a collective, a songwriters' alliance, to jointly sue Thorne for the return of their work and unpaid royalties. And they wanted Leo to be the public face, not as a plaintiff but as their advisor, the veteran, the one who had gone through the fire and come out the other side. Leo hesitated. The thought of re-entering that world of lawsuits and conflict made him anxious. He had his peace. He had his daughter. But he thought of those 7 other voices, silenced for years. He thought of the notebooks and hard drives sitting in drawers, songs that belonged to them. He said yes. The alliance, which they named the Original Thread, filed a single massive lawsuit. With Leo's blueprint and David Chen's pro bono guidance, the case was airtight. Facing financial ruin from the federal case and lacking the will for another fight, Marcus Thorne settled. He transferred the copyrights of all 7 songs back to their true writers and agreed to a collective payment of $3.2 million in past royalties. No NDAs this time. The settlements were public. Leo didn't take a penny from that victory. His payment was watching the press conference as the 7 songwriters, some in their 50s and 60s, stood together and played a few bars of their returned songs. The room was filled with a kind of reverent joy. He watched from the back of the room, Chloe's hand in his. In the years that followed, Carry You Home found its natural level. It wasn't a chart topper, but a steady, enduring favorite. It was licensed for a few more films and commercials, the fees now flowing to the correct bank account. Lee used a portion of the ongoing income to fund a small annual scholarship for single parents studying music at a local community college. He still plays guitar, sometimes in his studio, sometimes at a small, friendly open mic. Chloe, now 9, is learning piano. She writes little songs of her own. Their life is gloriously, blessedly ordinary. One afternoon, he was cleaning out a closet and found the old, cracked guitar case from his busking days. Inside, tucked under the torn velvet, was the original weathered notebook with the chords for Carry You Home. He flipped through the pages, the ghost of his younger self hovering in the pencil marks. He showed it to Chloe. "This is where it started," he said. She traced the faded notes with her finger. "It's a happy song now, Daddy," she said, and he realized she was right. The melody hadn't changed, but its story had. It was no longer a song about loss, but about return. He keeps that notebook on a shelf in his studio, next to a framed photo from that life-altering wedding night. It's not a picture of the bride or the venue. It's a security camera still, grainy and off-angle, that Alina Vance's team obtained. It shows a tiny figure in a denim dress tugging a white gown, and 2 faces frozen in a moment of seismic understanding. It reminds him that truth, no matter how small its vessel, can shake the world. Leo Hayes walks his daughter to school every morning. He writes music when the house is quiet. He answers the occasional email from a struggling songwriter who heard his story, offering a little guidance. He is not a hero. He is not a victim. He is a father, a songwriter, and a man who finally came home to his own life. The Busker's daughter told the truth, and in doing so, she gave him back the only thing that was ever truly stolen, his own voice. The story of Leo Hayes is about more than a stolen song. It's a map of a broken system, where creative work is treated as disposable and silence is the price of entry. For every case that makes headlines, there are thousands that never see the light. Songwriters, artists, developers, designers whose ideas are taken, repackaged, and sold back to the world without their name attached. What Marcus Thorne counted on wasn't just legal loopholes. It was the crushing weight of exhaustion, the belief that fighting isn't worth the cost, that your voice isn't worth the trouble. He built a career on that calculation, but he failed to account for one variable, a child's uncompromising sense of truth. Chloe Hayes didn't understand copyright law or publishing splits. She understood that her father made something beautiful and someone else was taking credit. In that simple, devastating logic, she held the key to the entire castle. This case exposed the fragile scaffolding of the creative economy. It showed how easily ownership can be papered over, how the gap between a demo on a flash drive and a registered copyright can become a canyon where careers disappear. But it also showed that scaffolding can be rebuilt. The alliance that formed, the original thread, proved that collective action turns isolated victims into an undeniable force. Their victory wasn't just a refund, it was a reclamation of legacy. Leo's journey from Golden Boy to Busker to Quiet Victor asks a difficult question. How many brilliant things are we missing because the true creator was pushed into the shadows? How many melodies, stories, or inventions have been lost because the cost of claiming them was too high? The answer is probably incalculable, but the solution isn't just legal reform, it's cultural shift. It's valuing the origin as much as the product. Today, when you hear Carry You Home in a coffee shop or a film, you're hearing a ghost that found its way back. You're hearing a father's grief, a daughter's courage, and the quiet hum of justice served. The song is the same, but its sound is richer, layered with the weight of its true history. The next time you pass a street musician, a struggling artist in a small gallery, an independent filmmaker maxing out credit cards, remember that the distance between obscurity and recognition is often just a single moment of being seen. A moment where someone chooses to listen, to ask, to believe the impossible story. Elena Vance chose to listen. It changed one man's life, and by proxy, many others. We live in a world of curated finishes and polished final products, but every finished thing has a raw, vulnerable beginning. Protecting those beginnings isn't just about fairness. It's about ensuring the future has a soul. It's about making sure the right name is on the work, so the right story gets told. Leo Hayes got his name back. He got his song back. But more importantly, he gave others a blueprint to reclaim their own. In the end, that might be the most lasting composition of all, a simple, repeatable melody of truth that anyone can play. Subscribe if you believe every creator deserves to own their own melody.